On the way to WrestleMania III, we're getting updates in the Observer about how tickets are selling, and it's noted in early March that they've sold 40,000 tickets, but Dave is not so sure. He says even though there's still 5 weeks left, it's going to be very difficult to actually sell 50,000 more seats. As all the good seats are gone, most of the diehard fans already have them. Those who are flying in have probably already made reservations. So now you're just looking at fringe folks. I don't know about 50,000 more of them. But he also says, hey, the pay per view's been blocked out in both Michigan and Ontario. And we've heard of this before. We don't want you to be able to stay home and order the thing. We want you to come out and support the live event. And we know, man, they're going to continue to cruise. I mean, just a week later or a few weeks later, there's a report that they've sold more than 70,000 tickets. So they've already broken the record that they set with Hulk Hogan and Paul Orndorff in Toronto back in August of the prior year. So there's a suggestion that, hey, there might be a $2 million gate here. And at this time, there's 166 closed circuit locations. And I know some of you are young enough to say, what the hell does that mean? Well, it means you'd go down to your local arena or perhaps a movie theater or a drive-in stadium theater or something like that. And you would be able to pay a ticket price that maybe is higher than a traditional movie and then go in and watch this thing. Because not everybody had pay-per-view capabilities at their household, but about 6 million homes did have pay-per-view here. I'm bringing all of this up, Jeff, because your dad was such an innovator. He owns his own territory, but he sees these things that are happening in his business that maybe he never thought were possible. The big closed circuit on 166 screens, pay-per-view capacity to 6 million homes. And now we see that Vince, even the critics were saying, well, he sold 40,000, but can he sell 50? Well, he sold 70,000, but will they do 2 million? When your dad is processing all of this, did your dad at any point feel like he needed to try to keep up and compete? Because I know these reports put a lot of pressure on Jim Crockett and his brother David. Was your dad feeling any sort of similar pressure seeing all the meteoric success of the WWF?
So let's go back, and you might appreciate this. I certainly, again, I love kind of the generality, the topic. We're doing deep dives here and there, but you got to almost take it back to 1987. My dad was born in 42, so he started his really wrestling journey late 60s, early 70s, and all that. But Conrad, in his the first, and this is just my obviously my experience with him and hearing it, but his first kind of mindset, and you'll probably be able to give stats is that holy crap, in the Sheik's territory, they're going to put 70, they're going to sell 70,000 tickets. It wasn't, and I'll get to the pay-per-view and closed circuit in a second, but the mindset of Vince is outside of his territory. The McMahon family runs New York, and now they're over in Detroit at the Lions Stadium, if you will, and the Sheik's quote unquote old territory, and they're doing this with this, and the as the Observer reported about, the Toronto, that was Maple Leaf and the big monster business Hogan and Orndorff did, and just my dad was much more geared, and this is a character flaw, or he was looking at that live event business so much. Again, going back to kind of the core, that was what his mindset was, that holy, look at what the live event business is doing. And then you start putting in, my dad always, I don't think he ever missed a Mike Tyson fight. Hagler Hearns, the Hagler Hearns, and oh my gosh, who's the third of that boxing trilogy during the 80s? Hagler, Hearns, and who was Sugar Ray Leonard? Leonard, Hagler, Hearns, and then anyway, my dad never missed boxing ever. He always bought those pay-per-views, but the closed circuit, he understood it from kind of the mentality. And so as far as real data bringing in and all that, he was obviously amazed at that, but he always stayed focused on the live event. And okay, how are they doing this? And what TV did they have? Conrad, in 87, so USA Network was where? I'm just trying to think, because those are the conversations on how are they putting the butts in seats? What's their TV? Just all that, all those kind of mindsets. But it was geared to my recollection and my experience with him. He was amazed and dialed into. They're selling 70,000 tickets in Sheik's territory. How the hell are they doing that? With what TV and what marketing? Yes, action figures, and yes, Hulkamania was running wild and all that kind of stuff. But that was the big uh, box office number that he would lean into, and then the pay per view business was even bigger, obviously, and even more revenue. Yeah, again, 87, the transitional year that it was across the board. Territories dying and pay per view exploding.
It's hard to take a look at where Memphis was and think it was dying, though. I mean, in this era, you're doing 7 or 8,000 folks a week at the Mid South Coliseum. That's like a $40,000 gate, even with very affordable tickets. But I'm wondering, with this emergence of new media, like once upon a time, man, you probably at least rode in cars that had 8-track players, and then eventually it would be cassettes and then CDs. And now people are like, what the hell's a CD? Like, it's all evolved. And I'm wondering, does your dad see, hey, this used to just be about tickets and picture money, but now with the licensing of the action figures and closed circuit and pay-per-view and VHS, is this a newfound opportunity? And we know that there would be, the WWF's going to make a mint with their home video releases, but there were sporadic. I don't know. Your dad felt like he put his toe in the water a few times. He'd do some things with Pro Wrestling Illustrated and release some matches that way. Was your dad, when I talked to Jim Crockett Jr. years ago, when I had a conversation with him about what the difference was and the reason Vince took off and maybe JCP did not in the same manner, he was pretty clear in saying he should have hired more support staff. He just didn't have the support staff there to keep up with these things. You know, he knew how to promote wrestling, but we needed someone to run home video. We needed someone to run merchandise, all these different revenue arms that are really spinning up out of nowhere, that now there's a newfound opportunity. I mean, because by this point, Vince is on well over 100 syndicated stations. So it's not just USA, but he's also got the syndicated show. And this is not the era where guys are getting rights fees. So when you were rattling off, hey, the ratings are great in Evansville and they're great in Memphis and they're strong in Nashville, you could promote things to sell that way. Do you think that if there was a missed opportunity for Memphis, with the benefit of hindsight, maybe your dad needed more, for lack of a better word, we'll call it infrastructure from an office standpoint, to capitalize on some of these things?
So the short answer is not only yes, but hell yes. He had a mentality, for better or worse, that the wrestling industry is, what's a wrestling promoter? And we're going to get into a Ron Fuller story later, that he's selling half his territory to Dave Woods. And, but Nad had a real fundamental belief that it's relationships and what's between your ears on how to really navigate a promotional business. So much so that, and this is one of the things that you look at, the reality of it is, so Vern's library sold to Vince, World Class Library sold, all the different libraries of film were sold to, basically, really was the nucleus of the WWE network, if you will. My old man and Lawler, their mindset was so laser focused on this is, whether behind the times or narrow sighted or just lack of vision. And that's where I go down at the end of the day, maybe 2 generations from now. I think what is going to look back on with the chairman, with Vince, is his vision of things were just completely different, because my old man took a master copy of Memphis TV on a Saturday morning and probably had, I don't know, 3 or 4 masters. They recorded over the masters. There is no such thing as a quote unquote original Memphis tape library. Now there's a lot of tape traders and there's a lot of content that floats around and all that. But as far as like the original, and I get it wrong, but whether it's 3/4 inch to VHS, anyway, the quality of it as it's morphed through the years, that doesn't exist. Conrad, that tells me everything as far as the mindset. And when I got to the WWF in '93 and they dive into this Coliseum home video, and here's why you want to get on it, Jeff. And yeah, you may have to stick around till midnight, till the third hour of challenge is done or whatever it is, but you're going to get residuals. You're going to get Coliseum home video, uh, royalty checks and all that kind of stuff is. And so whether it's Crockett or Fritz or whatever territory owner, that transition from a live event business to a television business was missed by, I don't say, yeah, in a lot of ways, Vince, by all of them, except Vince. That's the transition. I'm going from a live event business to a television business. And so to have a television business, you got to have a different marketing department. You got to have like you said, a home video department, just all, affiliate relations, which goes in all the syndication. It's just a whole, you got to have pay-per-view relations. Then all of a sudden we're going to get international. All of that, the departments were put in place, and the territory promoters, they missed all of that. Does that make sense?
Yes.
That's the business radically changed in '87. We're seeing the territories go down. If you drill it and drill it and drill it and drill it and drill it down, the live event business, for the lack of a better word, what became secondary. And a guy who made so much money in the '70s only on live event business, they didn't see the change coming, didn't adapt.